This is the Bethune-Cookman University Wildcat News Feed on Sirius XM, radio channel 142. HBCU, broadcasting from the Wildcat Lab in Daytona Beach, Florida. WELE 1380, The Cat. It's time to hear the good news from BCU.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BCU Wildcat Newsfeed, also known as #Talk Tuesday, the place where we get the real, raw, and relevant facts about what's going down on the campus of Bethune-Cookman University and HBCUs all around the world. I am your host, Fran Sean Reed Barnes, and you are listening to WELE 1380 The Cat. One of the top concerns of students and parents when they head to school is their safety. Here to tell us more about how you can remain safe on campus and how you can ensure your students do as well is Chief Elder, Chief of Campus Safety. Welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we also have with us Miss Althea Kennedy, Director of Emergency Management. Welcome.
Welcome. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you all so much for stopping by the studio today. I know we have a lot of listeners and students that want to know how they can remain safe on campus and what is the biggest threat to them as college students, not just at BCU, but college campuses all around the world. And so thank you for stopping by to share that information with us today. Now, starting off, could you all tell us what is your number one tip for incoming students to remain safe on campus?
I would say ensure that they're aware of their surroundings. That's like number one when it comes to safety, knowing exactly where you are when you enter a building, knowing your emergency exits, things of that nature. Make sure that they have the Wildcat Safe app downloaded if they're a Bethune-Cookman student. It has a lot of safety features on there as it relates to emergency contact numbers, 2900 for campus safety, in the event that they need assistance when it comes to safety.
Wonderful. And Chief, what would you say your number one safety tip is?
My number one safety tip would be stay in tune to everything that's going on around you. Open your eyes, open your ears, and pay attention. It's essentially the same thing Ms. Kennedy just explained. Students should be aware of their surroundings. Pay attention to who they're around. Pay attention to where they're going and the opportunities that they have to keep themselves safe by just avoiding certain pitfalls.
Wonderful. Now, earlier I asked you for your top 6 tips for campus safety, and I'd like to go over those right now so you can elaborate on some of those for our audience. The first one was see something, say something. Can you tell us more about that?
See Something, Say Something is a nationwide campaign, but here at BCU, we are asking all students, faculty, staff, and visitors when they come on board campus to pay attention. And if they see something that seems unusual, or if they see something or hear something that sounds that they need to be like they should be aware, they should find someone to report to. So we don't just only want them to report directly to campus safety. So the message behind the message is find someone responsible. Talk to your friends. Say it to the company you're in. Call 481-2900. Go inside of a building and find an adult representative. Find a professor, a counselor, one of our vice presidents. They're very visible on campus. Just be open to speak to each other. And the communication cycle will help us protect campus by just saying something.
And they can also do that by using the Wildcat Safe app. There's a report a tip feature on the app where they have the ability to report things that they see if they don't feel comfortable with actually going to campus safety. They also have another option on there where they can also call in if they want to talk to someone immediately, things of that nature. So just making sure that they have the proper resources for what they need.
So is that a wave of the future now, having campus safety apps where students can report things? Maybe I'm dating myself by saying is that a wave of the future, but is that something new that a lot of college campuses are doing? They're allowing students to report and call in via apps now? Okay.
Yes, they are.
Wonderful. The next tip you said was to be aware of your environment. Did you want to expound on that a little bit more?
Yes, because there's a difference in being at home and then coming with your own set of core values and joining a new family that has a mixed set of values, and you're trying to all engage in a culture together. So when we say be aware of your environment, you have to be aware that some of the things you may have even said at home now could be considered a potential conflict. So you have to watch what you say, watch what you eat, watch what you drink, and be careful about who you engage with. There are a lot of undesirable behaviors that we don't welcome on campus. And students can engage with new faces and not know that that's a potential predator, for lack of a better way to say it, to our campus culture. They may be here to break down the fabric of the student getting that education by keeping them in the mud with the latest fad, who's partying here, or what drug is trending, or what new alcohol mixed drink we're drinking, and they get involved in that atmosphere just by association. So we want people to be aware of their environments and use the See Something, Say Something principles, the Wildcat Safe app, to make adjustments as they go, and they can walk away before they potentially become victim.
I like what you said about being aware of your surroundings, because I think when you come to campus as a new student, you think that what was okay at home and what was safe at home is now safe on campus, and that's not always the case. You know, you think if you left your car door open in this city, you can do it in that city,
Right.
And that's not the case. So being aware of that change and transition. So I really like what you said about that.
The students come and they're seeking their independence, and they're learning to socialize, and mom and dad have set a great foundation with high expectations at home, but they were better equipped to inspect what they expect at home. Now they're away, and they're trying to find a sense of foundation for how they want to use what mom and dad trained, and they practice different things.
Yes.
And we have to develop an environment where they can have some practice, but we're still kind of like mom and dad to gird you up in the direction you must go safely.
Now, the next tip you share says, don't abuse drugs and don't use illegal drugs. You would think that's self-explanatory, but talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, the phenomenon is not a phenomenon. The reality of students that in all colleges that have an experience with using prescription drugs for maybe pain or for maybe depressions or a variety of things. When, like I said, once you're away from home, you may attempt to do things so you don't have to suffer the consequences of that same strict home environment. Example, I may be feeling sick, but I don't want to tell mom, so I self-medicate by going to the local drugstore, picking up some products, and next thing you know, my roommate may have a prescription for the same symptoms, and I try that, and now we're experimenting with a prescription drug that's not necessarily illegal, but the use of it is not in line with the prescribed medication rules, and then that could lead to the use of illegal drugs, the overuse of marijuana, the practice of experimenting with chemically designed drugs like ecstasy. They call them different things in the university environment, but we have to be very careful that we make sure students are engaged more socially, so they're staying in tune with not falling into that trap of experimenting with any type of drug. So that's over-the-counter, prescription, and the illegal base that we have to be careful.
Now, here's one that you don't see every day. It says, don't act in anger.
Well, that's something that's biblically based for me. I'm a spiritual leader, and we're a Christian-based university, and the word says anger leads to murder. And we, especially as young men, have to learn that there is a time to anger, but any action based off that anger could be very critical to not only the person who's upset, but those who are around them. So we want to be slow to anger, and we want to give them room and train them how to use that and focus, because sometimes you can become angry and it'll help you focus better. I'm upset that I didn't do as well on a test, but I'm not going to act that anger out on a person. I'm going to study harder. So we want to make sure that there's no physical action in anger, that there's more focused, positive action with any thought that I'm upset.
Wonderful. Now I see an acronym here that says THINK, T-H-I-N-K. Can you break that down for me?
Yes, ma'am. The T is for to make sure it's true. And this whole acronym is to talk about how you speak to each other. And it's going to be one of our new platforms that we use for Department of Campus Safety and speaking engagements. Make sure what you're talking about is true, or what you're about to say. And then the H is make sure what you're about to say is helpful to someone. If it's hurtful or harmful, like my grandmama used to say, you're better off not saying anything at all. So make sure that it's helpful. The I is to make sure that it's inspiring. If you're encouraging someone, most of the time there's something good to say. But if you're going to discourage someone, then you may want to take that private. Some people get motivated from discouragement. You look at great athletes, when people tell them what they can't do, they go and work harder to perform better. Michael Jordan was cut from his basketball team, and look at what happened with him, But make sure it's inspiring, and then think to see if it's necessary. Is it necessary that you need to speak at this moment? Because it might not be your turn, or it may not be appropriate. So, and then the final one is K. Make sure that it's kind. What you're going to say doesn't need to rub people the wrong way. And all of these things are in God's timing. So I wanted to pack it into an acronym that is something that I've heard before, and I'm just implementing. It's not new. It's just going to be of value for us.
That's great. Now, listening to you go through the acronym of THINK and just some of the things you've said before, it makes me feel like you need a couch where people can just come and sit down and talk to you, because it sounds like a lot of what you've said is it starts with the mind and it starts with the person's well-being. And before I go any further, I guess I'll start with you, and then you can chime in, Chief, as well. Do you find that some crimes on campus would be prevented if students took advantage of I want to say it's a psychological services or counseling services on campus?
Absolutely. I think that we have those services on campus, and I think that it's of the benefit of the campus community, because I don't want to just limit it to students. I believe faculty and staff can also reach out and use those services as well. I think that, mental health is extremely important. I don't think it's anything that, I know as a culture, sometimes we kind of shy away from trying to seek help and things of that nature, but I feel like it's essential. I think it's just as important as we have physicals, yearly, annual exercises, yearly. I think that mental health is just as important.
Chief, did you want to chime in on that?
Hey, man, is it Romans 13 or Romans 12? Which one is it?
Romans 8:28.
It's be ye not transformed. Don't be focused on the matters of this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what she's saying.
And I think that mental health is actually more important, if not more important than physical health, because wherever the head goes, the body follows.
That's right.
So I think they should definitely take advantage of those sources.
We need an organ in the studio today, because they are preaching up in here. Okay, now the last tip that you provided was rules minus relationships equal rebellion. Relationships minus rules equal entitlement. Rules plus relationships is the answer.
Absolutely.
Expound.
Absolutely. Actually, since we just come from the conversation about mental illness, I will share with you where that formula came from. I participated and trained in a program called CIT, Crisis Intervention Team, is what I was becoming a member of, and it's through an organization called NAMI, the National Organization for Mentally No, it's the National Organization for Mentally.
Is it mental illness?
Mental illness, something like that. I know the acronym is NAMI,
Okay.
boy. But if you put that one on there, that one's gonna tear it up, right? But I know NAMI is the correct pronunciation. And everyone that trained us in crisis intervention training was mentally ill, and I didn't know it at the time. I went through the training thinking, "Wow, this is great. How did you become an expert?" And they would tell me, "Well, I'm the one that tried to commit suicide. I'm the one that was depressed." And it was a shock. So one of the ladies explained to me that she had a younger person that was challenged, and this was something that kept them on track. And it was an equation. And rules minus relationships equal rebellion is exactly part of the problem at universities on some fronts. We have a lot of rules, but we don't take the time to learn each other or build relationships with each other before we're enforcing them from time to time. So it's incumbent upon campus safety to develop that relationship so they will appreciate what the rule is there for. So is it giving them the why through a relationship before we're impressing the rule? And then the rebellion piece will be compromised. Because if somebody tells you to do something you don't know where it came from or who they are, you may just say, "I'm not going to do it because I don't know you." Then the second part of the equation, relationships minus rules equal entitlement. When you don't explain to people, when you are always their friend, when there are parenting philosophies out there that parents are trying to be friends with their
Before
children.
parents. That's right.
Yeah, and they just get run all over. You stand in the grocery store or the toy store and you see a child throwing a straight tantrum because their mom just didn't buy the toy. That's an entitlement piece. You feel as if I can say and do what I want to do because you've never given me boundaries. So as campus safety, we have to establish those boundaries and help students, faculty, staff, and visitors all get along within those rules and relationship building moments. And then the entitlement piece will be compromised. And then finally, the answer to the equation is you need rules plus relationships. You got to have a balance of both and stick to them. Build good relationships, love everybody, and then the rules will fall in line. If we do it that way, then we're taking care of the golden rule. We're taking care of the top two that Jesus left behind for us, and we can build and develop more productive citizens and more godly students.
Great. Now, I want to get to the questions that our audience has. What are the top 2 threats to a student's safety on campus?
I would say situational awareness. Like from this conversation, you've noticed that we've been saying pretty much the same old thing. It all boils down to situational awareness. Being aware of your surroundings. I often observe students with headphones in. They're looking at their electronic device. They're not being aware of their surroundings. They're crossing the street when it's not a crosswalk. Simple things that we take for granted, they're really not doing. And so that's a threat to their own safety because their attention is elsewhere, not where it should be as far as getting across the street safely, things of that nature. And I would say like the lack of knowledge. It's not that the information isn't out there. Like they have resources at their fingertips. However, it's, taking it upon yourself, to be safe, making yourself a priority when it comes to safety, using the tools that you have.
Great. Now, what role can parents take in helping ensure their students stay safe? I know
Wow.
you have helicopter parents that
Bulldozer
want
parents.
to, monitor their student at every moment and make sure
Yeah.
their kids are as safe as possible. And they have the Locate My Child app on their phone. So for parents listening, what can they do to make sure that they equip their students to be as safe as possible during their matriculation on campus?
Safety is such an intrinsic value. There are people who at the bump of the window become afraid. And then there are people you'd have to shake the whole house before they're scared. So it's such a value that is isolated to the individual. So what Ms. Kennedy explained is just being aware of yourself.
And I would say education. It starts at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Before they leave, they got to lay down the right comments about life coping skills.
Yes.
Because like we've been explaining, the situations that they come in contact with, if they don't have a knowledge base to navigate it, they're going to be in the storm and they may jump off the ship and they're not aware of the dangers. So parents should communicate with their kids on a different level. Not that you're governing them now, more that you are listening to them now. You've trained them. Now you got to give them room and practice patience to see if that freedom that they have is going to translate. And then allow us to be the surrogate and support your questions.
And then it's all about being prepared, not scared, but being prepared. And you're prepared through education.
Now, what about like pepper spray and things like that? Is that a form of preparation that you all condone on campus?
No, it's not
or
a form of preparation.
Not at all.
Well, the keychain pepper spray stuff is fine to have. We do see that is something necessary. It's a low level, less lethal option for people to protect themselves, and it's designed for male or female to get away, not to cause harm. So we have to go back to educate. So we have to have our students come to our See Something, Say Something meetings and in the dorms and in the chapel and in the PAC center when we put those on, so you can learn when to use those type of tools.
Wonderful. Now, are women more at risk than men for campus crimes? Why or why not?
My answer is going to be no.
And my answer will be no as well.
Right.
Crime knows no gender, no race, anything of that nature.
No.
What is the most frequent crime that you all see on
Petty
campus?
theft.
Yes.
Petty theft is most frequent. It's a crime of opportunity. Sometimes it's isolated to certain areas on campus that we're vulnerable, like the laundry room. Students remember the comforts of home. You go and put your clothing into the washer, and you go back to the room and you have no worries, and you come back and your clothing's gone. And when you really look at a pile of clothing, you really can't tell whether it's yours or mine, but they're overlapping services inside each dorm that are using the same machine. Sometimes they get stacks of clothing and never pay attention. And then they go in the dryer, same thing, same business. I lost my wallet, things like that, and people don't return it sometimes. But for the most part, they do. BCU is the students and faculty staff are great at returning lost items. So most of the time we're recovering things. But then you got the undesirables. Sometimes people are not paying attention to their environment. They may compromise some of the safety by propping doors, and folks come in and they steal from us. And those are few and far, but just to know that something as simple as propping the door could have caused a petty theft. But that's the prominent crime that we have on campus.
In the age of social media and smartphones that can share your location, what is the new and rising threat that you all see amongst students? I
would say televising too much. A lot of people like to pretty much, like they say, flex for the gram or for Facebook. They tend to pretty much advertise like, hey, I'm going to Argentina this week, or I'm going to Atlanta for the weekend. So they're kind of letting the undesirables, as Chief would say, let them know that, they're open pretty much for anything that could possibly take place that would be in a negative light. And they pretty much like to share their location and advise where they'll be at all times.
Now, what is the one common sense rule you believe most students overlook when it comes to campus safety?
Being aware who you're around. You could become friends with someone who does not have your best interest at heart. And this mere conversation could be very entertaining, but if you hadn't started measuring that relationship to see if that person is making you better, you can fall into a trap and be used. You can be used. Friendly service is getting a ride from campus to the mall, and that person has an intent to commit a shoplifting, and you just don't know. That's just an example. But just being aware of who you're around and screening people to know. If good indicator with us, if I'm talking to you and you feel like someone took your property, and I ask you who you were around, and you can't even give me their first and last name, that's a clue. If you only know a nickname, you probably didn't, engage in a relationship enough to see if that person's valuable to you.
And I would also add, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I know a while back we had issues with students, I guess with like fraud, like fraudulent checks, things of that nature, because they want, they want money and things of that nature. So I would say if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably a fraud.
Now, closing out in the last minute or so that we have left, what is the specific role of campus safety? How do you all define it?
Well, campus safety manages, what's the specific role of campus safety? To protect and serve all safety needs while balancing the rights of students, faculty, staff, and visitors according to the policies and procedures of Bethune-Cookman University.
Now, you all were highly applauded for how you all handled the recent Hurricane Irma. What went into the planning of this, and how can other campuses protect themselves and their students during natural disasters?
So when it came to Hurricane Irma, we pretty much ensured that our plan was up to date. We anticipated the needs of the students and of our particular campus, and we created a plan and made sure it was up to date to match those needs, and that's pretty much what we did. And we coordinated with external and internal stakeholders, and that was pretty much it. And we just stuck with our plan.
Well, you all certainly did an excellent job. One of the final questions we have from our audience is, what are the limits of campus safety? I.e., how do you all work with local police, and how do you determine who handles what issues?
I was going to remember a song. It was some No Limit Soldier or something like that, but I can't remember. I can't remember how the song goes. Maybe Radio Land can figure that one out for me. But there's no limit when you build the proper relationships. We share information with local, state, and federal authorities, and we share information with other universities. We're all like-minded to protect and serve. And if you guys go onto our website and check out our Clery report, which is our annual fire and safety report, it'll detail some of the patterns that Ms. Kennedy and the Department of DCS put on for campus just to provide safety. But
Absolutely.
Crimes that are reportable at crimes that are reportable at the felony level, we must turn those over to sworn law enforcement. Quality of life issues, though, that are things that we, as law enforcement and campus safety, can use discretionary authority on. We decide who will handle. If there's a misdemeanor issue and a victim wishes to go through the criminal judicial system, we allow that to happen. But we do our very best to work within the scope of making sure we are getting along, balance that. If it's something we can mitigate there, we try to take it on as campus safety so we can protect our students' futures with these degrees that they're going to be getting and leaving, so they'll be more valuable and crisp to them. But both Daytona Beach Police Department and DCS and emergency management are all connected. We call each other all the time, and we use those levels of supervisory discretion every opportunity we have.
Well, thank you so much to Ms. Kennedy and Chief Elder for coming into the studio and talking to us about the do's and don'ts of public safety, campus safety, and how to stay safe. I am your host, Franshawn Reed Barnes, and you are listening to the Wildcat Newsfeed, also known as #Talk Tuesday. I will see you next week.